Our next keynote is about making change happen and the effects of that. Specifically, how do we move towards a more sustainable goal on this earth? So Taimur Burki is our next keynote discussion. He is the Waste and Recycling Manager at Intel and has been a change agent with that organization, been a significant part of that company's success. Intel has a long major manufacturing presence, a long history of that presence here in the Valley. And the company is recognized as a leader in implementing sustainable business practices, making change from a corporate perspective for a sustainable future. And he's joined by Michele Ogburn. She is the Manager of Solid Waste Inspections, Compliance, and Enforcement at Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. So Taimur and Michele will chat about how he has gone from dumpster diver to driving global change. Please welcome them to the stage.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How's everyone doing this morning?
Yeah.
Well, welcome. We are here to talk about driving change in the global scale. So tell me, how did you know you wanted to dumpster dive as a career?
I guarantee you I never did. I don't think anybody age whatever, 8 to 14 is like, you know, the things I think about doing, you know, stuntman, Superman, whatever, right? No one's like, dumpster diving. That's it. That's my goal in life. This is what I'm going to do. It actually just happened because I'm willing to do strange things that other people aren't willing to do. So, like, this is sort of funny. You can make fun of me. That's fine. I'm good with that. I actually started off in computer science a long time ago and realized I hate that. I hate programming, which is really funny because I've been with Intel 22 years. Yeah, and I did a bachelor's in biology, specialized in ecology. Nothing about dumpsters in there, right? Then I got a master's of science in environmental impact assessment from University of Wales. A little bit more, maybe some dumpsters in there, but not really. And one of the first things they did when they hired me at Intel, they're like, okay, you did your master's on environmental management systems. That's great. We need you to do this. And because our Ocotillo campus here had a Project Excel permit, we actually had recycling goals as part of our permit. They said, okay, make sure we hit those. I'm like, oh, all right, sweet. I don't have to sit in a cube. I can go wander around. Maybe summertime, not the greatest time to wander around and climb on dumpsters, because that was summer in that picture there. And it's sort of hot in Arizona, like 117 when you're grabbing onto a metal dumpster. Learning curve, gloves, when diving in dumpsters.
Safety first.
Yeah. But one of the things I realized was you have to walk your sites, and we're throwing away a lot of stuff we don't need to. There's a lot of stuff that we're like, oh, it's a waste. Really? Doesn't look like a waste to me. It looks like something somebody could use. And it was that sort of mindset of not really knowing anything, right? And just saying, what if? Well, what if we did this versus that? And I started at a site level, and it wasn't me creating this from scratch. One of our most senior technical positions at Intel, the most senior, is considered an Intel fellow. One of our environmental engineers was an Intel fellow. He had set up these programs decades ago in Santa Clara, right? So I just like to consider I was just following in the footsteps of those gone before me and creating more chaos. And very simply, I just sort of figured out, okay, if we could do this, we could do that, and sort of asking those what-if questions and going to other sites and asking it. And it sort of just sort of grew as with what I do. So I started off, when I was at Ocotillo also, they put me, okay, do wastewater permitting and compliance. Got to dive in sewers. Another good job description. And then once we began building a new fab there, like, okay, you know what, you need to own all waste. Haz waste, chemical waste, solid waste, electronic waste, food waste, you name it. It's me. All right, so I did that for 10, 11 years. Built fabs, renovated them, helped out globally, virtual factories, et cetera. And then I did some air permitting, and then they said, okay, we want you over in the global group to create global chaos. I'm like, all right, and that's what I still do. But no, really, it's, you know, when people ask you, like, how did you did you have a plan for this?
Nope.
Not one bit. That whole thing of being flexible is key here. But you too have come to the world of diving in dumpsters. So how did you end up in this world?
Oh, so back as a kid with my father and grandfather, we would go to construction sites and actually do dumpster diving. Because my father and grandfather were convinced that there was treasures, and we would take things that we found home and make things or use them around the house to fix something. So I got introduced at a very young age. I think part of it is the generation of my grandfather. He grew up in the Great Depression, and really that reuse and use to the best of its ability kind of mentality has funneled through my family. I went to school, started pre-med, and decided I wanted to be around for my family versus at the hospital taking care of other people's kids. So I switched my degree. I took a bunch of random classes, hydrology, geology, environmental science, and was like, I need to have a career around these because they're fascinating, and I think that it's going to be important later on. So I graduated, went to work for USGS, worked on my master's in education, because I figured it's one thing to know something, but it's another thing to teach other people to kind of start creating a mindset that we need to take care of where we live. From there, I actually taught some high school chemistry, did some consulting, and then eventually ended up in government. Dream job, right here.
That's so cool. So, and look, both of us completely different ways, and we both dive in dumpsters.
Yes, we do.
All right, sweet.
So for those of us who aren't familiar with Intel, especially your operations here in Arizona, tell us about what Intel does.
So we make really, really small things. I don't know if people realize that, right? 7 nanometer, 10 nanometer transistors on chips, right? We own, operate, and actually design all of our own manufacturing campuses, data centers, and office campuses. In Arizona, I think we've been here approximately 40 years. We have 2 major campuses, the Ocotillo campus where I'm at. There are 4 major wafer fabs, and then the Chandler campus, which has got 2 smaller plants, and that's more of a development site with all of our, well, not all, but a lot of the Internet of Things group, the very revolutionary groups. And, when you think about if data is going to be the currency of the future, data becomes much more important. And when I walk through the exhibition halls, what do you notice? There's a lot of instrumentation and controls now looking at how do you optimize the waste, the management of waste, whether it is automation in the MRFs or whether it is how you do your logistics. Well, a lot of that is running on data, right? Well, we like to consider ourselves one of those that will enable that future of how you manage data. And if you want to see what it looks like, that's Intel Ocotillo. That is a fab. The one on the, my right is Fab 42, and that's one of our largest wafer fabrication plants that has just started up. And on that site is Fab 12, 22, 32. Notice a trend?
What is your current focus?
My focus is trying to figure out how to upcycle waste, really. So globally, as I sit there and ponder what evil we can do, is looking at, how do we get better? It's just a simple question, especially with all the infrastructure changes around the world and market changes, wondering what is possible. So I get to play around with both haz waste and non-haz waste and chemical waste and e-waste, et cetera. And it's one of those things where you're always looking at what can be done. How do I need to put more recovery systems on site? Can I do closed loop systems? Do I do closed loop systems off site? What's the infrastructure, right? Like the state of Arizona, what can be done? And to do that, like this morning, I was in early morning meetings with Europe. And one of the benefits of being global is I get to learn weird things globally. Like you do this there, like in London. How many people have gone to London? All right. Did you know there's a wonderful waste system there called the Athena system, built by, and operated by one of the largest waste companies in the world, and they basically have a very sophisticated MRF, and then what they cannot repurpose, they're actually, if it has a decent BTU value, they're making like bricks and then burning that for energy. Now that's pretty cool technology. Is that brand new? I think they've been running it for over 20 years. But it's that sort of thing where I'm able to look at overseas and go, what if? Has anyone looked at that here? Could we do it? Is it possible, right? So a lot of the things I do are like looking at that possible, what could happen. Another thing that I do is looking at waste projections. Okay, over the next decade, how much to 2030, how much waste do we think we're gonna produce? What are the waste streams? What can we do with it? It's very simple. And is there a way to say, hey, let's not produce that from the very start? Go work with what our pathfinding groups and have the conversations of, let's not do that. What about you? What fun are you up to?
Yeah. So here we are working on end markets for current waste, increasing programs around the state and in the Southwest area to increase market for our recyclable goods. Different ways to recycle plastics, glass, different areas to transport them for reuse, educating on reducing our consumption. Because as a country, we consume 2 times per person the amount of waste in the rest of the world. And so finding where all that waste is going to go and how we can repurpose as much of it as possible has been a current focus.
That's a large focus.
Yeah. It's daunting. We have 10 of us. So it keeps us pretty busy. But so you have been able to do this without having a team. Tell me about how you do that all by yourself.
Well, so I guess that's the first thing is it's not all by myself, right? We're a company, whatever, 100,000 people, and every day I get weird emails from people, can I recycle this? Or, hey, if you're gonna go build a new building, have you thought about this, that, and the next thing? So we have a very passionate workforce that wants to do the right thing. So that makes my life easier. And the other thing is, so I used to be in EHS, now I sit in sustainability. So we have an environmental health and safety organization, over 100 people scattered around the world. So I immediately have peers that I can work with. We've got fabulous engineers, you know, whether it's mechanical engineers, industrial systems engineers, ultra pure water engineers, et cetera, that I can go to and work with. And of course, you're not going to be successful if you're not able to work with your suppliers and vendors. They know things. I only know what I know, which isn't that much, right? They know, when you add up everyone's knowledge, we all know a lot more. And I'm totally willing to meet people midnight, so I can meet with Asia, like this morning, 6 a.m., so I can sit there and chat with Europe, and put myself on their time, because there's probably more of them than me on the phone. So let me try to do that so I can work with them to build a rapport, and most importantly, show them that I am willing to work. I'm willing to help them get things done. I'm willing to help fund things so they can make beautiful things happen. And that's the key is, are you willing to work with others? Are you willing to say, I don't know things, but I bet you know some things, and if we all put it together, and maybe this person and that person, we can really do something. That, and of course, being an engineering-led company, is copious amounts of data analysis. You have to have the data. If you don't have the data, you cannot make the arguments.
So earlier we talked about reducing the amount of waste. How much waste does Intel produce currently?
Just a wee bit. I mean, I think last year, approximately 129,000 tons. Now, I think that's a lot, until I began talking to you all, the municipalities, and I realized some of the municipalities are producing 50,000 tons a day, which I'm like, wow, I'm staggered by this. That's huge. Now, my rates are better, right, from a landfill avoidance and a recovery, but that's been a work in progress. So this is over the last few years of us taking a look and just asking simple questions of what is possible. Now, one of the things people will say, well, this probably cost you a lot more. If I recover something and are able to sell it on the market, I just save some money, right? We actually make revenue off some of these things. Not a lot, not retiring anytime soon on it, let's put it this way, right? But we're able to make revenue, and when you add in your cost avoidance and actually create the total cost models, this makes sense. You want to drive to this. I mean, my tonnage, even though compared to yours is probably tiny, is still the right thing to do from an economic standpoint too, not just from an environmental standpoint. In fact, you got a win-win. Finance is always like, what else can you do for me today? You got this win, what else can you do to help me with my operations budget? So, as in speaking of like, if my waste is tiny, what's the states like?
I think we're at through the last year, about 9.9 million tons.
I feel so much better. Got 129, you got 9 million. And what's the recycled percentages? How are you all doing?
I don't have the breakdown.
sorry.
No, it's fine. I do know that our recycling coordinator is working very hard to increase recycling programs. We have a program with other state agencies. We have 44 of them on board to do in-house recycling, and we are shooting for a 5% contamination rate, which we've been hitting. We're adding 4 to 6 agencies by the end of the year for a total of 50, which is very exciting. We are a platinum level on the City of Phoenix Business Leadership Program, which focuses on the sustainability components of energy, water, waste, and transportation.
I just want to say 5% contamination level. Outside of my pure manufacturing waste streams, that is the best I've ever heard of.
Yeah,
That
our
is
recycling
amazing.
coordinator works very hard on education. There's a lot of signage in our recycling areas in the lunchroom going, this goes here. And so we do a lot of self-sorting. There are like 10 bins and very clear pictures as to what goes in where. He's available to answer questions if it's like, ooh, which bin? So he does a lot of work in that area.
That's great, because I'm actually having to go switch my office recycling to something towards that model, because my contamination rates have been too high on the mixed waste streams, and a lot of it's ending up in landfill for just the office waste. So, wow. I'm going to be calling him, be like, all right, how do I do this? Because obviously you know more.
So the concept of circular economy is becoming more and more popular. Can you share an example from Intel?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say to the circular economy folks, welcome to the club. Those of us that have been working with RECRA have been doing this since '76, if not earlier, right? In the world of haz waste, we are always looking to say, how can we directly reuse? How can you put closed loop systems in? How can we have feedstocks? So when the people bring up the terms, closed loops, circular economy, I'm like, totally all in. Oh yeah, because this is just a continuation of what we're doing. So when you ask, like, well, what have I been doing? So back in the late 90s, we introduced more copper to the process on making the transistors. When that happened, we were like, oh, we don't want to destroy the POTWs, because that would be a bad thing. And that's copper. Copper is of value. So very simply, we took those nice shiny copper orbs you see on the screen and put them in a bath and ran the wastewater through it and ran electrical currents. And what happened is you get the not so shiny copper orbs up there, which are pure copper, which we then sell back onto the market. And we do that now at multiple factories around the world. Another thing that happened was a couple years ago, we were looking at what chems we buy and what we do, et cetera. And we were like, okay, so we use very high purity sulfuric acid to etch wafers, right? Just to etch the patterns. And then it drains. We then treat it in a wastewater treatment system with copious amounts of sodium hydroxide, and then it goes out to the POTWs wastewater. And then we buy sulfuric acid to use in our cooling towers and our industrial systems. Perhaps we could segregate that sulfuric acid, send it off to people that make sulfuric acid, and then get it back to use in our industrial systems. So we started doing that too. It took us a bit. I know you'd be like, really? You didn't figure that one out early? Sometimes change takes time. There's a lot of people to get buy-in. But we've definitely, that is an example of looking at things and going, just because we always used to do it like this doesn't mean it has to be done. And we can change things. And that's where something we're quite proud of, because when you look at the volumes, that's a lot bigger than my food waste or office waste. And sort of Paretoing it out and say, okay, what are the right things to focus on to do? Because, yeah, the circular economy thing it just puzzles me on why aren't more of us on board? Why do I occasionally still hear the resistance of like, oh, this isn't a good idea? And you're like, which part of saving money in the environment do you not like here? I just want to know this, because obviously my communication skills are flunking lunch if I'm not getting this, right? I mean, those would be, I guess, some of my 2 more larger examples. And what about you all in the state? Have you done anything?
Actually, the City of Phoenix has been working on that. We also have some other examples from around the state the community of Pinetop Lakeside have created a transfer station where residents do their own sorting of materials, kind of like a first line of defense, and then do a regional hub and spoke transfer system of recyclable materials through various different entities. Kingman has a relationship with Nevada to take glass and have it recycled. So there's different ways to get the glass from various parts of Arizona to Kingman so that it goes to Nevada. Recyclops is an agency organization that's been popping up around here. It's kind of an Uber-style recycling. So much like you would call up an Uber ride to take you from point A to point B, Recyclops will come to your house or your business, pick up your recyclable materials for a fee, and then take them to the facility transfer station and drop it off, and that is all covered. The Mesa has a household hazardous materials center where it's sort of a swap meet setup. Residents can come and drop off stuff, and then other ones can come through and almost kind of shop and pick up things that are half used and nobody wants anymore, kind of thing. And Sholo has been collaborating with the county and neighboring communities for 11 years now and putting on a household hazardous materials event every year to kind of make sure that stuff gets reused appropriately.
See, I think that's amazing, and I didn't know any of those things, and I think that's great. Just what the cities and the counties and states are able to do. I mean, I tend to look just at what we're able to do, but the fact you're able to do that and go beyond us that's fabulous.
So these are some highlights, but what keeps you up at night?
It's infrastructure, right? I mean, I occasionally think I produce a lot of waste. As I learned today, no, don't produce much waste at all. That's actually part of the problem, is I don't produce enough waste for someone to create a business to effectively create a circular economy. Let's take food waste. I've been taking runs at food waste for 22 years now, right? The first time we did it, we said, okay, let's just get rid of all disposables and go to reusables. Didn't work. Forgot to upgrade the dishwashers. So, learn things, right? So then we went to compostables. It's supposed to be the solution, right? Compost everything. Do you have an anaerobic biodigester by your plant that you can send it to that's tanked that gets to the right heat levels? No. That's not so good then, right? It's not working well. So I said, okay, well, we've replaced all the dishwashers, get rid of all the compostables. We're going to go to straight reusables, and our campuses tend to have 5,000 to 10,000 people on them. So we have our own cafes, at least at Ocotillo there's 3, Chandler's there's 3, we operate 24/7. So we do generate quite a bit of food waste, and by doing so, really try to do the right thing. But when I go look at the cafes, we're able to segregate that food waste correctly. But when I go look in the offices, 40% contamination rates. I'm like, who puts an aluminum can in food waste? Honestly, who eats metal? No.
Someone looking for some micronutrients.
I guess, yeah. But to me, it is honestly an infrastructure issue. Like, let's take food waste, right? We know there are several technologies out there, off the shelf, that could be put in place that you could charge us for. We would send waste and pay people to take it, and you would generate power and a nutrient-rich liquid compost that then could help with drought for farmers. But on the Western United States, you don't have many of these. This is not new technology, 80 years old? But that infrastructure worries that I have, which now have come to the fore with the closure of the Asian markets, right? On many things, is definitely an issue for me. It's like, okay, because then I have to sort of scratch my head, take a step back and say, okay, let's get a little bit more innovative now. What can be done? What about you? What's making you go, phew?
Disposal space, rural collection programs, they really need help. A lot of our rural communities are underfunded when it comes to recycling programs and household hazardous waste programs and the like. So we've been, again, working on the regional systems, trying to find end markets for them to make sure that the product ends up in the right location and not in a wash somewhere in the middle of nowhere that we then have to go and pull out of the wash and costly. E-waste is a big thing. So, yeah, disposal space. We're running out of land.
You just can't make more land, is what you're telling me? All right.
No, not with the rising oceans.
All right, fine. I see how it is.
So what do you think is the biggest challenge in the world relating to waste?
So as I ponder this, I, basically trained by Intel, right? So I sit there and go, okay, if we have an issue of like waste, how to manage it, what are the contributing factors? First of all, to me, is scale. 9.9 million tons a year is what you said?
Yeah.
Out of Arizona,
Around
not
there.
a heavily populated state. 50,000 tons a year out of some of the larger cities, a day out of some of the larger cities, the US as a whole, running around 300 million tons a year. It is a scale question, and that is to me one of the issues, but it's driven by the philosophy of consume, 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 right? And throw away, not reuse. The other piece is logistics, right? If you have to ship something 2,000 miles, it is not effective, right? If you have to ship it across borders, across oceans, this is not an effective system. And then you come down to technologies. How many new technologies have we seen in the last 5 years for repurposing waste? Anyone? Yeah, I haven't seen that much either. I've seen some things on the industrial level, on site levels, in the haz waste world, but in the non-haz waste world for solid waste, I haven't seen scalable technology coming through. And that comes down to, I think, it's the same mindset, right? People are not looking at things correctly. So I had the pleasure of wandering around New Zealand this year. And that was very cool. I didn't know there was gold in New Zealand, and I didn't know there was a gold rush. And when there was a gold rush on the South Island, they actually had everyone come in from everywhere looking for gold. And the Chinese immigrants that came said, we'll manage your waste for you. And they're like, awesome, get rid of the rocks. And they got rid of those rocks. They calmly grabbed the rocks, went back, got on their junks, went back to China, and sold jade. People were throwing, the waste was someone else's treasure. And that philosophical change for all of us hasn't happened. Like when I look at my recycling rates and landfill avoidance rate and reuse rates overseas in like Asia, it's much higher than it is in the US. And it is obviously there's a population and space constraints, landfills, right? And also a cultural issue is, but I think it's not just, now it's like a worldwide cultural issue of we need to think differently. What do you think?
I would agree. Definitely disposal space is going to be a global issue here real soon. I just think of all the movies that have been out recently where the earth is overcome by piles of trash and we escape to space looking for that new neighborhood that doesn't ever seem to exist. And they just keep hoping that if they leave it long enough, that the trash will disappear. And in the Disney movies it does, and some of the other ones, but we never end up finding that other world to go to. So I really think that we need to take a look at what we have and really fix where we currently live. And I wish all the astrophysicists and whatnot the best of luck in finding the next new Earth. But I'm not sure it's going to happen in any of our lifetimes. So let's protect what we have for today and future generations that are already kind of here, our kids, that sort of thing.
Totally agree with you on that.
So what can the waste industry do to help this disconnect? How do we get involved?
There needs to be a different business model, right? Like as I help Intel design buildings, I'm also the green building guy, right? And I work on fabs, data centers, et cetera. I actually have master design standards for the docks explaining this is how you're going to segregate your waste, and this is how I want to do it. Now that's because, you think about it, right? You've already picked up the waste, you've already put it in something, you've already taken it to the dumpster. What's your cost? Those bits always have to happen. The cost is that end point. But if you were to say, what if that wasn't a waste, and bring it back in to use or sell or something, I just think we need to work on people's mindset of that total cost model, and then also the innovations within technologies, right? I know I've chatted to many waste companies. They're like, we have this technology, but it's not where you are situated. And I think there needs to be that sort of somehow coming together of a variety of different forces to say, let's create community scalable solutions. Because industry tends to have cleaner waste streams that can help these businesses, right? Okay, except for ADEQ with their 5% contamination rate, right? I just think if we could all come together, we can create these community level solutions, because then you don't have to be shipping things away, right? Could you imagine a city powered by waste, whether it's both economic and power? Then you don't have those 30% energy losses from the power plant to the city. All right, that means you have less water. For every kilowatt hour you generate, you use what, 2 to 7 gallons of water? So you save water. And so as you start being able to merge these things, we can create a different model.
So why are you so passionate about working in sustainability?
I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau, Mutual of Omaha. I've lived in Pakistan. I've worked there. I've lived and worked in England, here. And you know what? We have one planet, right? Let's do the right thing. I don't get the idea, just philosophically, of no, let's just destroy it. What? I just honestly don't get this, right? It's like, you know, let's just dump it in the river. Seriously? Seriously, that's your drinking water. That's where you go fishing. That's where your kids swim in. To me, I don't get it, and I'm very passionate about that. And you?
Same sort of thing. I live and work here. I've grown a family here, and in order for them to be safe and healthy, we need to protect the areas they play, the areas they learn, the areas they live, and teach them that it's not okay to just throw something away when you're done with it. Make sure that you've used it to the fullest of its ability and things like that. So, what do you think the opportunities are for professionals in this room?
So, first of all, I think there's so many opportunities, like finance, total cost models, right? Marketing, because scientists and engineers cannot communicate, right? To me, the entire environmental movement sort of flunked lunch as soon as we started talking about green, as opposed to talking about, hey, I can give you a return on investment of 20%, and you can avoid this cost, and I can improve reliability, because what would you rather listen to? Okay, I might want to listen to the green stuff more. But most of the decision makers, right, are going to want to hear, you can save what for me? We can avoid these costs. We can do this and do the right thing at the same time. Let's chat, right? Or you obviously have your engineering and your sciences, whether it's haz waste, you have your architects, et cetera. So there's so much. But as you look at like your stages of career, the first thing is go walk and talk. Go outside, go into the field, whether it's doing being a stack monkey, get up on the scrubbers and pull air emission sampling, whether it's sitting and crunching the data on spreadsheets, whether it's walking with the technicians or getting in the cars with the drivers to see their routes. Go get the experience to see what it's like. What are they actually doing? And then network, right? Make sure that people know of you and you know of others, so you can be a facilitator and help people, because they'll know your name. And the most important piece to me, which a lot of the technical folk always look at me strangely, is the communications. Right, as I said, environmental science, scientists and engineers, we are not the best communicators. Learn how to effectively communicate. And what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, a very multidisciplinary approach to this involves a lot of things: science, communication, marketing, business. There's something for everyone in this, and the more we can work together, the better off we will all be. So it looks like we have some questions from the audience. So someone wants to know what Intel is doing about reducing waste around packaging.
Great question. So right now, I'm running some tests with some companies around certain types of packaging and whether I can use ocean plastics in it. Let's see if we can pull that plastics that you can get now, they're on the market with the resin makers, and will it meet our drop tests and other tests? So we're trying to see what can we substitute. At the same time, in reduction, we are looking at working, and we constantly do this, work with the vendors to say, how much can we reduce to still maintain the integrity of the products? So I'm not going to tell you it's even close to being done, because we all know it's continuous. It is a continuous cycle of you looking to see what you can do based off what's coming in, what's going out. If it's the supplies coming into Intel, we work with those vendors. If it's what we're shipping out of Intel, we work within ourselves with our packaging groups to see what can be done. So that is a continuous set of work, and we've had some great successes, but I got to tell you, there's always a huge amount more room. Like, for example, we do not want styrofoam coming into Intel. Say, nope, you'll find other products to be shipping our stuff in. Right, look to try to get things in that we can either reuse, recycle, repurpose, so something.
And do you consider the end of life of your products as part of your waste management plan responsibilities?
So this is actually an interesting one because it depends where you are, right? This is a regulatory question, right? In Europe, you've got WE, right? And then that's already handled, right? I can't go take it away from the regs. So we actually did a reverse logistics to say you could send us your chips when they're bad. And I think we did that like 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we ever got one person sending us a chip that has precious metals on it. Pretty much self-explanatory why. But we do work with HP, Dell's, our customers around setting up take-back programs, working with them on how to recycle this, where's a safe place, what we can do. So we do a lot of work in that field. And because it's such a broad field, there's a lot of different things happening.
Does Intel consider a community's recycling program when they are locating a new plant?
I don't think so. Just pondering that for a second. I don't know. That's a really good question because I mandate that we're going to recycle, right? I mean, I'm the one who sets our waste goals, right? So we're going to hit 90% recycling goals. Our future goals are looking at upcycling. So basically where we have all our plants do allow us to be able to recycle. And over the years, that infrastructure has grown with us to allow for that. So it is definitely, there's certain things we do consider, but I don't know if like waste recycling is one of them. I doubt it. I think because I just make the assumption that I'm going to make it happen, right? As Intel, not me, but the broader Intel.
Do you guys create solar panels?
Nope, that is not something we do at all. We use them. We've got about 7.5, maybe to 8 megawatts sitting at the Ocotillo campus. I don't know how many megawatts are at the Chandler campus. So we do have them on site. We do utilize them. And it is part of the things when we take a look at when we design new buildings, and depending on where they are, what are the renewable technologies we're going to put in place on those? Because some places we might need to look at more solar thermal, some might be PV, some might be wind. So there's a whole variety of things. I tend to look at, first of all, how much energy conservation can I do? Then how much energy harvesting can I do? Can I do heat recovery from things? Can I put in micro turbines in the cooling tower blowdown? Maybe that would work. It didn't work as well as I thought it was going to. But before we go look at putting the bigger renewables on, first drive down your energy usage.
So you talked a little bit about the sulfuric acid process and mentioned HP and Dell, but do you work with any other manufacturers to increase reuses and closed loop processes?
Yes. Now you're asking me to remember all the variety of them that we work with. So let's just take purely world of waste, right? So we work with our major vendors looking at what technologies they have or the off the shelf that they can be putting at their site to enable recovery. How many people here have had the pleasure of reviewing RCRA? Yes. You know the love of looking at those exemptions for on-site reuse and recovery, right? And you know that you're like, oh, this is not, without getting a permit, it becomes a bit more difficult. So a lot of those we do work with vendors, and we do look at, what is possible on-site. So that is something we're continuously saying, the what ifs, and sometimes you build them, sometimes it doesn't work out.
So one of the questions on there is how much does Intel spend per ton of recycled waste compared to Arizona?
I have no clue because I have no idea what you all spend in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I'm
and
not sure
my
either.
spends are completely dependent upon the waste stream, right? It's very hard for you to compare, oh, you have cardboard and I have sulfuric acid. Two different things, right? Completely different. But if you, isn't the US average, it's like $50 a ton in the US to go to landfill, right? I think that's about your average across the US. So that's, you know, people ask me, like, are you looking to be revenue positive and it's got to be positive for you to recycle something? Nope. Not looking at that. Looking at doing the right thing. We've set our goals and we'll figure out how to reach them. But when you take a look at my program globally, I make money on it, and I'm not talking about tens of dollars, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And I have multi-million dollars of cost avoidance. So, but once more, totally different kettle of fish than most, right? Because it's industry versus city or state. But the economics are there.
How do you recommend overcoming permitting requirements from state to state to create regional solutions? In California, it appears it can take up to 12 years.
Which permits is my first question. Are you talking about a Clean Air Act Title V air permit? Are you talking about a minor source permit? Are you talking about a waste permit? Are you talking about wastewater permits? It all depends. But I do think one of the most important things is to not look at your regulator as a confrontation, like being able to talk to you, pick up the phone, come down and see, hey, I have an idea, what do you think? Do you think we could figure out how to do this? And if so, how could we do it? To me, the most important thing is that positive relationship, because, I mean, how would you like if I come in and be like, this is the law, this is what I can do, you have to agree to it. You'd hate me for that. It'd be horrible. You'd be like, uh-huh. No way. You have to be willing to work with people, and a part of that is, you know, got to sit down, right? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely face-to-face conversations, and we would much rather collaborate with industry and generators and that sort of thing to make sure that we're doing mission good, driving that forward in saving the environment.
Yeah, I just can't, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, the permitting timelines are the permitting timelines, some of them for very, very good reasons, right? And I don't think the regulators get enough kudos for, they have a good understanding. Like, I always laugh when I run into people and they're like, oh, this stuff's bad, we need to create our own standard because none of this data exists. Really? DOT and EPA have done significant amounts of scientific analysis on a huge number of materials, chemicals, compounds, pollutants, emissions, and that's one of the first data sources I always go to look at things, because you've got very solid data, right? And
Yep.
let's go from there, and if we need to update it, okay, right? But you know, I think you have to look at the regulators with a very positive relationship because you have data, you know things, right?
To quote my daughter, I know things, lots of things.
Exactly.
So, well, if there's no further questions, that sums up our time, unless there's anything else.
Thank you all for having us, and I have to say kudos to the professor for putting her foot down like a professor and getting everyone to move forward. That was good job. Appreciate that one. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, everyone.